Welcome into this special edition of Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health. Casey Phillips here with senior writer and editor Scott Smith. You know, we've been doing one of these every day from camp. We'll have one today also. But right now, this special edition is all about the depth chart. The first one has gotten released, and we always love to start out with a whole bunch of caveats. That the coaches don't want to do this.
Disclaimers,
They're
if you
mandated by the league, and it is ever-changing, ever-evolving. All these other footnotes into the situation. But it's still exciting to see the first one, to know that means there's a game coming soon, even though it is a preseason one. It just is another sign football is about to be back.
We like it a lot more than the coaches do.
That is very true.
They have to put one out because they have to make flip cards and things for the game in the press box. Otherwise, the coaches wouldn't do it probably until the day before the season. And the disclaimer is it's evolving. So we're going to look at it. We're going to highlight some of the interesting things, but we do understand that 3 or 4 weeks from now, it could change.
It could definitely change. All right, so let's go ahead and start, of course, quarterback, the one with probably the least amount of drama and intrigue. Let's just start with this one that we're like, hey, Baker's the guy.
Yeah, we don't have to spend a lot of time on this one. The top three are the same three in that order from last year. Apparently, Kyle Trask has been doing well, so he's probably going to hold on to that number 2 spot. And then the rookie, Zach Ennickstead, still isn't practicing due to a pre-existing injury.
All right, and so now let's move on to running back. This one, again, we know Rashad. He's the guy coming in from last year. But I do think this one's going to be interesting to see how it could potentially evolve over these next couple weeks in that 2, 3, 4 slot.
Well, a lot of it's going to have to do with when Chase Edmonds gets back on the field. He got hurt, I think, the first day of practice, and Bucky Everything's been playing a lot, looked really good out of the backfield. So especially the 2-3 could change there.
Okay. Now let's go over here to the third slide. We have wide receiver. Now this one, again, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, easy. We don't have to talk a lot about that. But this one, to me, has some of the most intrigue to it of any position on the team in terms of that 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, depending on how many you keep slot. So what does this one tell you?
Well, for one thing, the Buccaneers are listing their 11 on offense as 3 receivers and 1 tight ends, and that's indicative of how probably Liam Cohen is going to run most of his offense. Right now, Trey Palmer, who was the 3 last year, is still listed as 3, which is probably the way it should be. But Jalen McMillan, the rookie, has been having an awfully good camp. So, they'll probably all play, but one of them is going to have the primary third receiver role, and that's still being worked out.
All right, and next up we have tight end. So, again, Cade Otton playing 97% of the snaps last year. He's sitting up there at that number 1 spot. But I did think this is an interesting group as well. Of the Payne Durham, Kokieft, Devin Culp, that next 3 there is going to be interesting to see. What did you think of the fact that Payne was listed 2 and Kokieft and then Devin Culp?
I think Payne being listed 2 says that what Coach Bowles has been saying throughout camp is accurate, that they're expecting him to step up with more production this coming year. But also Devin Culp there listed at 4. I think from what we've seen on the practice field, he's going to force them to probably keep 4 of them if they want to keep Kokieft as well, because even though Coach Bowles says he's been a little unreliable with his hands, he looks good when the ball's in his hands. He's just a big, strong, fast guy.
All right, now let's look at this offensive line. So this is always an interesting one to think about, just even the way they write all this out, knowing how it works of who they keep on game day, of you tend to have your backup inside, backup outside. So it's not really, this isn't as clear in some ways of how it would be on a game day or who might make the roster. But outside of your typical ones that we knew, again, Luke Gedeke, Cody Mauch, Tristan Wirfs, we knew those were going to be what they were going to be. So this left guard and center area in particular, what do you make of those kind of guys that are listed right there?
We have seen Ben Bredesen getting most of the first-team snaps, so that's no surprise there. Robert Hainsey still being listed as the starting center after he started there the last 2 years makes sense, because coaches don't normally like to just take the rookie and put him right at the top. But we know that Graham Barton is fighting for that starting job, and he's taken a lot of first-team snaps. One thing I find interesting there is you could see there seemed to be a lot more depth at tackle than guard, and I think that indicates some of the guys that are playing tackle probably are versatile enough to play inside as well, like Brandon Walton, for instance.
Okay, that's going to be interesting to see. And then now let's take a look at our defensive line and what we have listed there. So there's your look at that group, and like you talked about the other day, we mentioned this of Kalijah Cansey, Vita Vea, Logan Hall was typically your starting group when there were 3 of them out there. What do you make of the guys that are listed after them and how this could shake out in terms of who makes the squad and who's listed at what in terms of the rotation?
So those first 2 rows, those 6 players are pretty much what the Bucs carried last year. No change there. So the question is, will they keep more than 6? Is there room for some of these other guys like Judge Culpepper or C.J. Brewer or Eric Banks to make it as a 7th, or could they possibly supplant somebody on that second line?
Okay. Now this next time we're going to look at outside and inside linebacker all here together, the way it would kind of look a little bit on the field. So tell me what stands out to you for these two different position groups.
Well, Yaya's hurt right now, but obviously he's still your number one guy. And it's Joe Tryon that has stepped back into the starting lineup. You remember last year, Shaq Barrett was one of the starters. He's no longer here. And Joe Tryon started the season but was eventually supplanted by Yaya. But now he's back to being a starter. And the rookie Chris Braswell is listed right behind him. And actually, while Yaya's been out, has been taking a lot of first-team snaps.
All right, so next let's take a look at the cornerback position. So again, Jamel Dean, Zion McCollum, we've sort of known going in that these are your top guys on the outside for the corner position. So what do you make of the guys listed after them?
Well, the funny thing here is you see the corners and you know that when you're in nickel, there's going to be three of them on the field. But there's probably a couple names that we're not going to see until the next slide that would be involved here because some of the safeties are involved in that nickel job. But Jamel and Zion, the key thing here to me is Zion McCollum. For this defense to do what it wants to do, it's going to need him to be as good as they think he can be.
Okay, and finally, let's take a look at the safeties. Like you said, there's a look at what your safety could look like, but also some of these names could be thrown in on the nickel package. So what do you make of this slide?
Obviously, everybody's just so excited about the starting combo of Antoine and Jordan. But Christian Izzian, Tavier Thomas, and Tyke Smith are all listed as safeties, but are in the competition for that slot corner job. So that could have a lot to say with who makes the team and how many safeties as opposed to how many cornerbacks make the team.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this edition of Training Camp Report presented by Advent Health that went over the depth chart. Again, all of our disclaimers. It's ever-evolving. It's changing. The coaches hate it, but we love to talk about it and dissect it. So make sure you come back later. We're going to have another Training Camp Report show during practice once it actually starts. So we'll see you then.